Hello, this is Max. The guy created a mannequin which came to life and transformed into the girl of his dreams, making the guy fall in love with her. You can subscribe to the channel after watching. It helps us a lot in realizing the content. In ancient Egypt, a woman named Emmy seeks refuge in a crypt, pretending to be a mummy. Her mother discovers her hiding there and reprimands her for turning down several suitors, determined to marry her off to a camel dung dealer. Emmy resists the idea of marriage and yearns for the freedom to pursue her interests, such as invention and flying. Emmy prays to the gods for guidance, but as her mother expresses disapproval, the crypt begins to shake. Suddenly, Emmy vanishes in a puff of smoke, leaving behind only a piece of her clothing. In modern-day Philadelphia, Jonathan Switcher enthusiastically spends his time meticulously assembling a female mannequin in a factory. His boss scolds him for taking too long, leading to Jonathan's dismissal. Jonathan, an aspiring sculptor, defends his dedication to quality, but it doesn't save his job. Jonathan later takes a job making balloon animals at a birthday party, but accidentally causes a boy to float away on a giant balloon, resulting in yet another dismissal. He attempts to apply his sculpting skills to hedge trimming and pizza decoration, but he is fired from those jobs as well. That evening, Jonathan picks up his girlfriend, Roxy, from her workplace, Illustra, on his motorcycle. Roxy urges him to hurry to avoid the regional manager, BJ Ward, but they are noticed anyway. While sharing ice cream, Roxy expresses disappointment with Jonathan's unrealistic outlook on life, and she leaves in a cab, leaving Jonathan to push his malfunctioning motorcycle in the rain. Down on his luck, Jonathan stumbles upon a store where the mannequin he painstakingly created is on display. He expresses his affection for the mannequin and shares how creating it made him feel like an artist. He leaves the store in high spirits, promising to return. The following morning, Jonathan meets the store's owner, an elderly lady, in front of the store. She shares the history of Prince & Company, her family's business, and thanks Jonathan for saving her from a falling 100th anniversary sign. In gratitude, she hires him on the spot. Jonathan and the owner, Claire Timken, explore the expansive and extravagant department store, and she confides in him about her struggles in managing the mostly empty premises. In one of the store's offices, a manager named Mr. Richards conspires with BJ Ward to purchase Prince & Company. When Jonathan and Claire arrive, she instructs Richards to offer Jonathan a job in return for saving her life. After Claire leaves, Richards interviews Jonathan about his work experience, and the young man expresses his creative preferences, particularly with mannequins. Richards claims to have the perfect job for him, and Jonathan is assigned to work as a stock boy. He excitedly calls Roxy to share the news and promises to see her that night. Meanwhile, Roxy rebuffs advances from her colleague, Armand. Jonathan, working in the store, occasionally steals moments to interact with the mannequin, confessing his love for his creation. Hollywood Montrose, a window dresser, catches Jonathan in the act and playfully teases him about his affection for the mannequin. That night, Jonathan encounters Felix Maxwell, the head of security, who regards him with suspicion and mockery. Later, while working on a display window with Hollywood, Jonathan is left alone with the mannequin. To his astonishment, the mannequin comes to life as Emmy. She introduces herself cheerfully to a bewildered and frightened Jonathan, crediting him with creating the body she now inhabits. Emmy explains that she hails from ancient Egypt. Jonathan, despite his incredulity, follows the excited Emmy out of the store. Meanwhile, Roxy, expecting to meet Jonathan that night, expresses frustration when he doesn't show up. Back at the store's workshop, Emmy admires the power tools and nearly shoots Jonathan in the face with a nail gun. She praises his hands, and they share a moment of connection. Emmy later suggests they create something unique for the store and proceeds to undress, surprising Jonathan. He hastily covers her up, much to Emmy's amusement. The next morning, Jonathan awakens inside the display window, and Emmy has returned to her mannequin form. He rushes off, completely oblivious to the tennis-themed redesign of the display. At Roxy's apartment building, Armand attempts to pick her up, but Roxy, upset at being stood up by Jonathan, gets into Armand's car out of spite and dismisses Jonathan's story about the living mannequin. Back at home, Jonathan calls his mother, questioning whether their family has any history of mental illness. Later at the store, Jonathan manages to weave through a crowd excitedly discussing the display he created. Hollywood sees him through the glass and applauds his remarkable design. At Illustra, BJ hints at opening a second store and leaving Roxy in charge of the current one. However, one of the employees excitedly informs BJ about Prince and Company's window display, quickly backtracking at BJ's expression. After BJ leaves, the employee shares the enthusiasm with Roxy. On the same day, BJ learns that a stock boy was responsible for the impressive display at Prince and Company, berating Richards on the phone for potentially jeopardizing their plans. Richards, who also seems to have been promised oversight of Illustra, assures BJ that the sale will proceed. During a board meeting at Prince and Company, Richards tries to undermine Jonathan's work, painting it in a negative light. Outside the boardroom, Jonathan and Hollywood brainstorm ways to prevent Jonathan from being fired. Behind closed doors, Richards continues to discredit the stock boy and pushes for the sale to Illustra. Mrs. Timken intervenes by suggesting they give their new displays a chance to boost the store's sales. Most board members agree with her idea and vote to postpone the sale for 6 weeks. After the meeting, Jonathan is brought in, and Mrs. Timken promotes him to visual merchandiser, in charge of designing the displays. Jonathan expresses doubt about the display's lasting inspiration, but Mrs. Timken encourages him. Before leaving the store, Richards instructs Felix to keep a close eye on Jonathan as he works on the window displays at night. That evening, Jonathan approaches Emmy again, and she comes to life, sharing stories about her past relationships, including one with Christopher Columbus. She reveals that she has traveled to various places and eras in history, but never felt truly content. In the audio section, when Jonathan asks if Emmy can still help him design the window displays, she readily agrees. Their faces draw closer, but Emmy accidentally sits on an audio control panel, triggering a loud blast of music. Intrigued, Emmy encourages Jonathan to dance, and they joyfully dance throughout the store, trying on different outfits and relishing each other's company. Hollywood eventually arrives, and Jonathan sees that Emmy has returned to her mannequin form. The window dresser notices Jonathan's connection with the mannequin but attributes it to Jonathan's artistic nature. After Hollywood departs, Emmy confides in Jonathan that he is the only one who can see her in her human-like form. Meanwhile, Felix overhears Jonathan talking in the elevator and confronts him with his dog, Rambo. The dog yelps and flees just as Felix notices Jonathan casually carrying the mannequin away. Before Felix can finish his threats, he gets trapped between the closing elevator doors. That night, Jonathan and Emmy complete their latest display, a cycling-themed scene with a moving background. The next day, the window display attracts another enthusiastic crowd, and Mrs. Timken congratulates Jonathan. Later, Roxy invites Jonathan to lunch at an upscale restaurant. He accepts, unaware that Roxy had previously conspired with BJ to stage a fire at the same restaurant. During lunch, Roxy suggests that Jonathan join Illustra as a window dresser. Jonathan mentions that he's working with a beautiful woman, but Roxy seems unbothered. He declines the offer, stating that he has finally found a place where he belongs, and leaves the table. On his way out, Jonathan accidentally causes a small fire, attempting to extinguish it with the waiter's toupee. In the midst of events, Felix briefs Richards about Jonathan's unorthodox behaviors, highlighting his dog's apprehension towards mannequins. Richards speculates whether Jonathan may have accomplices and assigns Felix to investigate further. On the same night, Emmy and Jonathan accomplish another inventive display portraying a beach theme while Felix surveys the area. Concurrently, Roxy and Armand infiltrate the store, endeavoring to identify Jonathan's charming associate. Emmy and Jonathan, engaged in playful banter, attract the attention of Felix, Roxy, and Armand. Felix discerns Jonathan interacting unusually with a mannequin while Armand documents this, and Roxy reacts to Armand's inappropriate remarks forcefully. Jonathan elucidates that his peculiar interactions are methods for inspiration but ends up in a skirmish with Felix. Jonathan successfully counters Felix with Emmy's aid. She reassures Jonathan she remains unnoticed. Excitedly exploring, Emmy encounters a glider and unintentionally alarms Felix, who she then incapacitates. Jonathan and Emmy then share romantic moments, expressing affection before completing their display, attracting admirers the following day. Felix, still reeling, reports to Richards and Mrs. Timken, who dismisses their concerns and commends Jonathan. Eventually, Richards and Felix are discharged. Jonathan's displays elevate the store's fame, and he continues to craft innovative displays with Emmy. While the rival store Illustra faces declining sales, Jonathan's success culminates in a promotion, but the images captured by Armand are viewed as potentially detrimental to Jonathan's image by BJ, leading to plots to exploit this. Jonathan's commitment to Emmy intensifies, and they share passionate moments, drawing attention from Hollywood, who aspires to learn from Jonathan. Emmy remains unable to reveal her real self to others, leaving Jonathan to handle Hollywood alone. Subsequently, plots to pilfer Jonathan's favored mannequin emerge, orchestrated by BJ and Richards. Jonathan and Emmy continue to revel in their shared moments and creations, all the while facing attempts at recruitment and distractions by Roxy and her entourage. Felix and Richards, committed to their theft, pursue Jonathan and Emmy, enduring multiple mishaps. Jonathan and Emmy relish their exploration and romance before facing an intrusion by Felix and Richards, resulting in multiple mannequins, including Emmy, being absconded. Jonathan, realizing Emmy's disappearance, confronts the antagonists at Illustra and faces multiple altercations and challenges in his pursuit to rescue Emmy from impending destruction. Jonathan's endeavor is supported by Hollywood, and Emmy's miraculous transformation is witnessed by a worker. They share triumphant and romantic moments as Emmy is introduced to Hollywood. Complications arise as BJ, Felix, and Richards attempt to apprehend Jonathan, but Mrs. Timken intervenes, leading to the arrests of Richards and Felix, while Emmy's true identity remains concealed. The unfolding events culminate in Jonathan and Emmy's union, witnessed by their friends and an enthusiastic crowd. If you are interested in such films, please proceed to the next video on the screen, and also share your thoughts about this film in the comments. Give us a like and subscribe. Goodbye.